All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Brian Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's up?
How are we feeling on this beautiful polar vortex Monday?
Hazy, I got to give you credit. I think we're all grown up because there was a phone call made on Saturday night. And in the past, we would have been all negative after a 3-0 Habitant lead. Mm-hmm. But this time I called you and you said, all they need is one and they'll keep trucking.
Is that what you said?
Absolutely not. Dude.
I'm sure that's what I said after that first period on Saturday.
Noodles, we had a combo after one, and I think we basically ripped every guy in the team, and we were so mad. And then the score ended up 7-3, and we didn't even have a follow-up combo.
Crazy, man. Like, we got another one tonight with Tampa in town. We'll talk about it, right? The Jays are active. Yeah. There's a lot to get to. But that game on Saturday, we hyped that game up more than any regular season game I can think of in a long time.
Well, dude, there was some juice in the air. First,
Absolutely.
It started off with, Ottawa, Boston, and you're like, okay, this flipped from dog days of the season to the second half push where guys know it's serious, guys know they're close in the standings. It was Toronto and Montreal. You just kind of felt something.
Absolutely. And like Berube said it, I believe, today, right? Like Craig Berube was evaluating the game, and he admitted, he's like, it wasn't just any other game. It was different because it was Leafs-Habs Saturday night, and it meant something. And the Habs were, pushing for the playoffs, and the Leafs were obviously in the position that they're in. And it's one of those scenarios where if you didn't see any of the game and you just looked at the game sheet afterwards, you'd say, wow, the Leafs just destroyed them. 7-3. How embarrassing for Montreal.
But I said to myself in the first period, if you brought someone that had no idea about hockey and you said during the first period, who's in first place and who's kind of scratching for you would have said Montreal.
Absolutely. The Habs, the first period, they were so good. Joseph Woll made 3 or 4 stops that were like 10 bellers that could have been 5-0, 6-0. And then, to the credit of the Maple Leafs, it did flip. And all of a sudden, they started chipping away. They didn't quit on it. I thought the second half of the game, clearly they were the better team. And, really, I thought Wall was great. I thought the 2 goalies determined how that game played out more than anyone else.
100%.
Right?
100%,
Montembeault wasn't
Brian.
good, and Wall was very good.
I agree. I mean, yes, Montreal had to push early on, and you know what? You're being facetious, but I thought the same thing after 3-0. I'm like, if the Leafs show up and get one, we've got a game here. Like that's the way I felt, anyways. But Woll was
Noodles,
great.
you have to understand, we did not have that conversation.
That was not at any.
That was a joke.
I'm joking. I know. I'm joking too. But what I thought it because watching it. Yes, Montreal was all over them. The Leafs they were back on their heels. They looked like, but they didn't have it. They didn't have it early on, and then they started to flex, and I thought it was a tale of 2 goaltenders. Joseph Woll, Brian, you tweeted it, like it's a 7-3 win. He's got to be one of the stars. Like I thought he was fantastic.
I thought he was great.
And got, he got a few bounces, but he also made unbelievable saves. I loved his positioning. I loved his poise. And in the other end, I thought that's one of the worst games I've seen Montembeault play in a long time. And there were great plays by the Leafs. Willie Nylander, but like even early in the third period, Nylander makes that move. Montembeault, he's in the corner.
He was in the fifth row, man. Really.
It was a great move, and Willie deserves the love for it, but Montembeault usually uses edge to try and put back, or he slid in the corner. It was like, okay, check, please, and whatever. And same thing in the Matthews goal. It's Austin Matthews. I get it. That's a 70 goal score. It's 10 feet inside the blue line. Like you can't hit the middle of the net. Those are bad goals. I thought it was a tale of 2 goaltenders, and it was thoroughly entertaining. I mean, it was a great,
that was the beauty of it.
But it was a weird game.
It was a fun game.
By the way, I sent out the most sarcastic tweet of all time. I said, I never care who wins and loses. I just like an entertaining game. And then I followed it up with très bien. I got so many people that were mad at me because they said, how can you not care? I was like, of course I care. The right team went into Montreal and they won the game. I care a lot in that game.
Yeah.
But when it was 3-0, I was looking for somebody because that's when everybody starts looking around to start watching. Okay, what do you got when it's 3-0? I thought William Nylander was unbelievable on Saturday night. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he was dancing.
That goal where he just slapped Hudson to the side and said, "Watch this," like that was a big boy play.
That was also a rude awakening for Lane Hudson on Saturday night. He's been outstanding this year.
Well, he got danced by Holmberg the one time.
He got torched, man. I think he was on for the Matthews goal. He was basically at the hash marks. And one of them was an empty netter, which is deceptive. But that was William Nylander, 9 years in the league, superstar, who just said basically that was like a punter trying to block or trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Like that's what that looked like. Hudson was trying to keep up with him and push him, and Willie basically said, "Go stand over there."
That was a stiff arm. That was a stiff arm.
Yeah, it was a stiff arm. It was Derrick Henry on one of the Grammatica brothers, and he completely punked Lane Hudson. And then he punked Montembeault, and that was the game at that point because once Willie makes it 4-3, the whole crowd flips. That was the amazing thing about the Bell Center. I was surprised. And again, I'm in Toronto, so it's not an exact science. It felt like there were thousands of Leaf fans there. And I know there were because they were showing them. But
there had to have been.
There had to have been. The noise coming out of the Bell Center after the first period was electric, naturally, and it should have been. Saturday night, Leafs are in town. Habs are on fire. They're up 3-0, and the Habs deserve to be up 3-0. They looked unbelievable. The Leafs, I think, were credited with 5 or 6 shots in the first period. I didn't remember them touching the puck that many times.
Dude.
Like, it wasn't even close in the first period.
Could have been 5 Cobb
easily. And then by the third, it had completely flipped, where all you saw and all you heard were Leaf fans, and the Habs fans were basically like, "Check, please, I'm out of here. I got to get out," because this is flipped so drastically, where it was 3-0 an hour and 20 minutes ago, real time, and now it's 7-3, and Leaf fans are getting loud and getting obnoxious.
That flip to that degree
crazy
is not common.
You never see that.
Never happens. Usually a team might squeak back and win it in overtime. Not like that.
No, that was
a collapse.
Complete
what it
collapse.
was a collapse.
Yes.
I thought it was a collapse because, to me, and listen, you know what? Both teams deserve credit to be where they are in the standings and work hard. Montreal's really pushed. They've had a great run. You can see there's some frameworks of really nice players there, and you know what? They were playing with a lot of confidence. And Liney's a great story. He's got 10 or 11 now.
Scored the 0-2 winner last night, man.
Yeah.
They beat the Rangers last night.
And that's the one thing I will say too. I watched last night's game because I'm doing the Rangers game. But I watched last night's game to see if Montreal, if that popped their balloon, or would they respond. And they found a way to respond last night, which I thought was impressive.
Game, Jamie.
Because it is. It's a ballsy comeback game. You're right. But go back to Saturday night. There were some great plays you can see. And then, veteran players, stronger players, certain players took over that game. And Montreal didn't have an answer. And again, if Montembeault makes 2 or 3 saves on goals that I thought that he could at least give himself a chance on. Mm-hmm. Maybe the game's not 7-3. Maybe that's a 5-3 or a 4-3 or whatever. And Wall, conversely, Wall makes a couple unbelievable saves. Like if that goes 4-0, I don't think we're talking about a 7-3 win. I think if they score,
that seems insurmountable. I mean, obviously 3-0 is equal. It's a massive mountain to climb, and the Leafs did climb it. But I think there's something to that. If it's 4-0, 5-0, what have you, or if they just the Habs come out in the third period and don't allow Willie to do what he did on the first shift and immediately allow the crowd to come alive, and the Leafs officially are back into it. But yeah, there was a lot that came out of that game. And again, credit Montreal because they got back in the saddle last night. Like at home, Laine wins it in overtime. They played really, really well. And we'll see what the Habs have going forward. I mean, they're in the hunt. It's Ottawa, Boston, Columbus, Montreal. Like it's going to be a race down the stretch, and we'll see who gets in. But as for the Leafs, I mean, that was big the last 2 games because they had slid before that. They had lost 3 in a row in regulation. You beat Jersey in very similar fashion, right? Not as extreme, but you're down at times in the third period. You stay on it. You get the big boys come alive. You get to overtime. You win it. And then we saw what happened on Saturday, and all of a sudden, whatever was happening before this 2-game winning streak is irrelevant. Now you got Tampa in town last night, and Tampa's reeling a little bit. They've been up and down. You got Johansson starting for Tampa. You got Wall in net, his 25th start of the year, which is a career high for him. And I love that he's going right back in at home against a divisional game.
That's weird Vasilevsky wouldn't be playing.
They're playing in Montreal tomorrow, and he's going tomorrow, I guess. That's what it sounds like anyway. I mean, obviously back-to-back, but I'm with you. I don't know why you wouldn't play your best goalie against the better team.
I just always remember Tampa in Toronto, Vasilevsky's in net.
Yeah, Cooper was getting kind of grilled about that, and he said, this is the plan. I don't know. He kind of danced around it and said we're managing over 82 games, and they're going with Johansson tonight and Vasilevsky in Montreal. But, you got a big one tonight, and you got a chance to keep kind of pushing forward if you're the Leafs, because Tampa's got 3 games in hand, and they're 7 points behind you. So do the math.
Yeah, it's a big 4-point game. Big 4-point game tonight, because you're right. Like you can separate, or you're right back in there. But Tampa's a team that is, they're not Montreal. They're a better team than Montreal. But that being said, you've got to play your game. Monday nights sometimes a little bit sleepy, after big Saturday night games. Let's see if they have a response type of thing, because that's, the schedule doesn't stop. They're playing every second day.
I found it fascinating, Jamie, how it went from, I think last 10 days I've said dog days of season 3 or 4 times, and then all of a sudden it seemed like that second level of the season. There's always the first level of intensity, the second, and then the third is the playoffs. There might be one more in there, but it seemed like everything kicked in at once, where like Sheldon Keefe hates his Devils now.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
The Sens got a gritty win against the Bruins. It was like, you could tell that game had some juice to it.
Yeah, well, you're starting to see, the
teams know the points are so important.
Right, like you're into the second half now, and I think it's a combination of a couple of different things that I've noticed the last few days. There have been crazy lead changes, a lot more goals recently for the Leafs anyway, and there's fights. And that goes a long way, too. The bigger personalities, like we saw Reeves and Xhekaj on Saturday night. We'll get to that momentarily. Xhekaj and Rempe went last night, and what was a crazy fight. Like just 2 monsters going at it, and Xhekaj got him. And I could understand where Xhekaj was going. We talked about this after the first. Like I got it on Saturday. It's 3-0. The building's going nuts. You don't need to quiet them down with taking on Reeves. Yet there is an element of when you're this might be an example of the modern era, and I'm sure there are examples of this happening back in the 80s and 90s. But how often did we used to hear heavyweights say, I appreciated that other heavyweight gave me a go when I asked him to go. Like Bob Probert would say that all the time. Ty Domi, it was like, it's my turn to go. Regardless of the scoreboard, we're going. And Xhekaj had a chance, and he didn't take it.
Well, I don't mind that, because it's 3-0.
I know that.
Do I want to get my head caved in? Possibly by this guy. And I heard Knuckles Nyland say this. He said, it's fine you don't want to take the fight, but you want to start shooing him away like he's some kind of stray cat and pointing at the scorecard, that one's going to hurt.
That goes too far.
You look stupid. You look stupid. Just ignore him and act like he's not there. You don't have to shoo him away like the cat.
Especially considering who he is. Like Reeves has worn the belt for like 12 years.
There's only one way that turns out well if you win the game. If you lose in the fashion that they did, you look like a dummy.
That's a great point.
Well, that's point. That's the problem I had with it, is they could have had a conversation saying, you know what, not right now. But you know what, Xhekaj wanted everybody to see. I'm doing this because it's 3-0, point at the scoreboard. Like it's putting a show on. Instead of just going, no, I'm not going to fight you right now. Why would I? Type of thing. That's a big boy conversation. Tough guys have it all the time. To me, I agree. It's more of a show for the crowd. Like, hey, point at the scoreboard, shoo away. That's amateur hour. I'm sorry.
It would hurt more, Jamie, if he just acted like he wasn't even out there, like he couldn't hear him, he was invisible.
Right.
And then he decked him later in the game, and then he just could have carried on business as usual. That would have been more insulting than the shoo away.
It's disrespectful in that sense. And you know what? Like stuff like that. You guys know I don't like the showboating stuff, but again, that's an old man saying that, so I don't. I have to understand that the game has changed. But it came back to bite him in the ass, and it doesn't look good. And Xhekaj's a tough customer. Don't get me wrong. That Rempe got him with a couple early yesterday. Dropped his gloves. He should have got an instigator. Rempe should have gotten the instigator, but Xhekaj got him. It was a great fight. 2 tough customers. But you're right. Ryan Reeves deserved a little bit more respect on that play because of who he is and what he kind of represents. But it's Xhekaj, all he has to say is, it's 3-0, I'm not fighting you, go away.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't have to point at the scorecard or score clock. He doesn't have to shoo him away. Give him the respect that he earns. And same thing with Xhekaj. If Xhekaj he's going to in the future want to do that to somebody. Somebody's not going to want to show him up. That's the part I didn't like. You don't have to fight in that situation. I just didn't like the theatrics to it.
Well, and then once the refs were in the way, he tried the "I'm going to get you now" type of routine, which again I thought was weak as well.
Dude, you can't get away from that, man.
Yeah,
once you made your bed with the shoe away.
Exactly, that's it. Like once the scrum, once the buzzer goes or whistle blows, you just have to skate away at that point. You can't then pretend like, oh, I'm pissed off and I'm going to get you. And that added insult to injury if you're a Habs fan, because listen, he threw a brilliant hit on Reeves to start the second period. And again, at that point, I think it was 3-0 or 3-1, and the place is going crazy. And they didn't lose because of Xhekaj, but all of a sudden, Reeves gets the last laugh. The Leafs walk out of there, and it's kind of a message to the Habs, like you're still chasing them. You're still. You talk about kind of shooing away. The Leafs kind of shooed them away as the game went on. But yeah, I'd be curious to. And Nyland, listen, Nyland's as tough as it gets, and Chris fought everybody. Like I'd be curious how fighters respond to, when you're allowed to turn down a fight, when you should take a fight, because I don't know the rules on that, and they're unwritten rules. But how many times I know we've all heard it. Guys say, "Yeah, it was 3-0. He didn't have to take it, but the guy took the fight," because that used to happen a lot, right? Heavyweights would be like, "I need." Where I'm coming from, and down the road, you're going to need one, and I'll give you one. And I just felt like, especially with Reeves, Xhekaj's chirped him before and wanted to go him. It's like, he's ready for you now at the Bell Center. And he said no. It's like, okay. He said no, and that's fine, but that won't be forgotten down the road. And, we'll see what comes of it the next time they play. But it was an electric night on Saturday, and I would expect a good one tonight. Again, with Tampa in town. And in terms of the standings and, chasing positions within the standings, this one means more for the Leafs. Like Saturday meant more for the Habs because they're trying to get into the playoffs. This is more for the Leafs in terms of them pushing Tampa behind them that much more. So we'll continue to tee that up throughout the afternoon. The Jays have made a signing. Anthony Santander, come on down, 5 years, about $92 million. We'll get into that later on. Keegan Matheson will join us. It is amazing how angry people are that this is a good.
Are you happy though?
Well, yeah. Here's what I'm getting to, Noodles. Is
okay. Sorry.
Guy had 44 home runs last year. They need power. It's a good signing. He was within the division. You're stealing him from Baltimore.
Why is this happening January 20th?
Well, I don't think the timeline matters because they're not even in camp yet. Like he's going to be a Blue Jay.
I do understand that, but if it's that, I think probably because of what has gone on.
I think. My read on it is the rest of baseball was probably holding on a 3 or 4 year deal, maybe $80 million total, and the Jays have been so embarrassed this year that they said we have to close on something. Who do we want? We want this guy. Screw it. We'll give you the 5 years. We'll get to 90. Like that would be my read on the outside.
But that's great. But I think that's stupid business.
Well,
like you struck out on everything else, and a guy with one arm that failed physicals, you got to get him, and then you get this guy.
I understand that.
It doesn't make sense.
That's the concern is that, Vladdy's still going to walk, maybe. Bichette's still going to walk. You're still not going to win enough games. The front office is going to get flushed out, and then you're going to have Santander here on a long-term deal and Varsho and Springer, and it's like, what are we going to do? But in a bubble, this guy hit 44 home runs last year. Like, that's a big number. He hits for power. He's 30. He's going to hit in the middle of the lineup. This should be a win, but they're battling so far upstream that, like, no one can give it to them, myself included.
Yeah, that's what.
Like, I just look at it, and I'm cynical all the time. It is a win. He's a good player, and there's no salary cap. Okay, give him the 5th year. But you're like, I don't know. What happened here? Why? Like, you immediately go negative or cynical when it comes to what the Blue Jays are doing right now.
I'd be curious to see if tomorrow you put together a mood meter, like it was for hatred of the past Toronto executives, like where these guys would end up. Would it be top of the list? It's recency bias, but
that's the thing. It's difficult to say because we're in the eye of the storm right now.
That's why they would be so high.
Yeah, like JP Ricciardi was not liked around here.
Like these guys?
Maybe not like these guys.
Why did everyone? What? Because he lived in Boston.
That was a part of it. He had an arrogance to him, and honestly, he didn't win. There was a number of different things.
We have him on our show
every once in a while. Yeah, listen, that's just I'm just telling you how people reacted to him. Like that was a reaction. Here comes a guy from Boston, and he doesn't really want to be up here. That was the vibe that JP gave off. John Ferguson Jr. wasn't exactly beloved. There were executives in like the Ballard years with the Leafs that I'm sure people were like, what the hell's going on here?
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Rob
Babcock. He made the Carter deal. It was really not good. Like Babcock was in over his head.
R.I.P.
Yes.
There was a few. There's been a few in the Toronto sports era.
Yes.
I get it. But this, you know what, Brian? You're right. Like I was at the airport, and a fan of the show comes up to me. He's like, "The Jays are a mess. What did they lost out again on the pitch?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Travel safe."
Know, man.
It was just people are so upset that this win, it doesn't matter to them. They're still mad.
And I think that speaks to how much work they still have to do. Is that you need to get the whole fan base back on your side.
What would it take to do? You tell me something they could do for everyone to say, I love what they've done here. I'm jacked for the season.
I think it begins with a Vladdy extension. Like that's
$400 million.
Whatever it is, Noodles. I don't know
well,
what
they got to blow $450 million to get the fan base on.
Well, I think what that would do is that's a win that you kept your best guy. Like he wants to stay here. Because here's at the core of why this offseason has been such a struggle. Everyone looks at the Dodgers. The Dodgers are lapping the field on everybody. They're just dummying all of baseball.
They signed some closer yesterday.
Yes, Tanner Scott. The guy's a stud. They give him 4 years at huge money. They're like, go ahead, we'll take you. He's like, sure, of course. Why wouldn't I? Everyone wants to play for the Dodgers. Everyone wants to live in L.A. Everyone wants to play for the Dodgers. I don't blame players for saying that's where I'd want to be. That's where I'd want to be, too. It's a sign that you actually want to win, and it's a well-oiled machine that's spending money. So I get it. We're all jealous of it, but what you're really jealous of is the success and the fact that they do it. They pull the trigger on it. So I don't look at it like, Jays missed out on Ohtani to the Dodgers, Sasaki. Apparently they were in on Scott. Okay. The bigger embarrassment this year has been that the Cleveland Guardians have been bullying the Blue Jays. That's way worse if you're a Blue Jay fan. And what do I mean by that? Angel Jimenez, they're dying to unload his contract. Who picks up the phone? Ross Atkins, and says, we'll take him on. Then you can tell the Guardians were like, the Jays actually think they're going to get Sasaki.
And you want this bonus?
I'm gonna throw it out there. There's no way they're going to take this. But I can give you a couple extra million international pool money. Will you take Miles Straw? They close their eyes, and Ross goes, done. And they're like, oh, my God, they took it. Holy, that's way more embarrassing.
That blew up Twitter. Like, people said after he signed somewhere else, they're like, that's a fireable offense. Sorry.
That's way worse than losing players to the Dodgers. The Cleveland Guardians looked at the Blue Jays front office and said, we can get these guys to take 2 contracts we're dying to get rid of. Neither of them can hit. Straw's not even going to play for him. Jimenez, A+++ defensive player, hasn't hit in 2 years. And the Jays took them both. That's way worse. And they keep digging themselves holes to the point where, again, you sign Santander, and it's like, what does this mean, man? It's like the wind horse. Like, now, why did they do that? Like, what's coming next here? What are they doing next? Anyway, Keegan will join us later this afternoon. Now that Santander is a Jay, what next? Because there's still off-season. There's still a bunch of free agents, and if they spend money, they can bring in more pieces. Maybe everything flips around, and it's all good here. And the Leafs in action tonight. We will get into what happened in the NFL as well. Hazenbro is back. Hazenbro seeing the board beautifully. Credit where it's due. Owen Wilson, pretty good weekend themselves.
What's the score?
Is it 6-5, Doogie? 6-5.
Hashtag
6-5.
Rampage.
Hashtag Rampage. Yeah.
I
6-5
saw 6-3.
Owen Wilson. 6-5 Owen Wilson.
It was 6-3, so you guys battled back.
Well, we had the spread last night. We had the Stones to take the Bills. The toughest call of the season. Everyone said take the Ravens, and my partsy and I said, no, we got the Stones to take the Buffalo Bills.
Well, if you get a guy who catches the ball, then
that
it looks
could be different.
right? That's a tough. That guy wakes up.
Mark Andrews is a grizzled vet, great player.
I told you guys about lying asleep at night and wondering what could have been if you were better in a playoff series or something. But that guy, that's tough sledding in the next. I don't know how long that's going to sting him.
Oh, I think the rest of his career.
There are people that are actually breaking down the throw by Lamar, saying it stunk.
Well, let's get into that with Luke, okay? Luke's coming up at 5. We've got something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza as well, on who's responsible for that loss, because that's generally what it's about, right? How did the Ravens screw up as opposed to how did the Bills find a way to succeed?
Yeah, that was in his hands. I'm sorry.
He's got to catch that ball. I agree.
Could
it have been a better spiral? Sure. Maybe he could have led him a little more closer to the sideline. I'm sorry. You're a professional tight end, and he's a pass-catching tight end. You have to catch that ball. You have to.
Yeah. Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. You have to catch that ball, especially considering the moment. It's mandatory. You've got to catch the ball. You play to catch the ball, and he did not. So Luke Wilson coming up just after 5. Chris Johnston still to come later this afternoon as well. OverDrive continues. OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. You've got Ohio State versus Notre Dame tonight. Big college football game. National championship game. Ohio State a big favorite, but we'll see what comes of it.
Good luck to the Bowen family, but I think the Notre Dame Irish gets smoked.
You're calling a blowout in favor of the Buckeyes tonight.
I do.
That's shameful for you to say that.
Oh, really?
You're an Irish guy, too. Like, come on.
I get it. I love Notre Dame, but you don't think it's going to be a blow?
It's a big spread. The Ohio State's a big favorite.
Isn't Joe Bowen skipping the game tonight? Like, is he not calling
it's a national holiday for him. Those guys, this is serious business.
I mean, I wouldn't label it skipping. You know, he's not pretending to be ill.
He's not calling in hooky. Yeah, he took it off, right?
Yes, he is not calling the Maple Leaf game tonight so that he can lock in on the Fighting Irish, which I think is very admirable. I like that idea.
It is.
I love that idea.
Wow.
And, Bonesy's stepping aside. He's been calling games for 43 years.
What would you do if the Leafs were playing in a Game 6 or 7 in a Stanley Cup final and the game started at 4 p.m.?
That would be really strange if that happened. I guess I'd probably...
You would say, I'm not doing...
I'd prefer not to be distracted would be the answer. Now, I'd also question what the hell Gary Bettman's doing, having a Game 7 of a Cup final midweek at 4 p.m. But, I'd probably prefer not to be on the air during that game. I'll give you that.
Al's brother would be hosting OverDrive. The three of us would be there. That's it.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we'd be in the building. Maybe we could do something beforehand, afterwards, do a little pregame, postgame. I don't know.
Exactly.
People asking us before the news comes out what we think the suspension will be for Connor McDavid.
I think it's very simple. It's the Austin Matthews suspension.
Yeah.
It kind of has to be.
Exactly the same thing.
It's the exact same thing. Connor Garland is Rasmus Dahlin.
And that's the exact same cross-check, so it's 3 games. There should be...
He got 2, I believe, Matthews, right?
Oh, Matthews got 2.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. Yeah. It's 2 games, and that's what he should get, and there should be no complaining. There should be no just 1 game because he's McDavid, because the comparable is Austin Matthews.
Yeah.
The 2-game suspension. Very simple.
And you know what? Regardless of who you are, listen, Garland, I thought Ray called it perfectly because Garland could have got 8 penalties before that all happened. You know, the holding, the hooking, whatever, you name it. Doesn't matter. Cross-checking the side of the head. And Tyler Myers should get 2 as well. Now, Myers was a weird one because that kind of came out of nowhere in the corner. It was like, here, take this with you after we just won the game. Like, that was I thought that was a little bit more, like, that's right in the face, like right square on in the face. And I don't know, but I think both of them are going to get 2 games. I might be wrong, but I think it's warranted regardless of who does it. Whether it's Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, or if that is, Pizzetta, somebody, a fourth-line guy on any team. It's got to be suspendable. You got to take that out.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you have to be in control of your stick. I know he's frustrated, but I remember saying after the Matthews one, I kind of liked it, and I kind of feel the same way here with McDavid. Like, we're not going back to Messier in the 80s or Gordie Howe, like those guys where they controlled everything because nothing was on tape and nothing got reviewed, and they'd throw vicious elbows to let everyone know, just stay away from me because I'm not in the mood for you. But I kind of like every once in a while the best players in the game still having a short fuse and deciding, you know what, I'm going to give you a reaction. You want one, I'll give you one. and this is what you're getting.
Right.
And credit to Garland, because he took a cross-check off the head and he didn't drop. He didn't pretend like he got shot.
But do you think the message would go through the league like a Messier elbow would? Like, do you think in the future, like where the game is now, guys are going to say, man, I better stay away from that McDavid because he what he did to Garland. I don't know if guys he would even think like
maybe
that.
not, but I guess my point is I don't see a downside in it either. I guess that's my point.
But it was such like a
take the suspension, the team will be fine.
But it was kind of like law when we were playing that like don't go near Wayne Gretzky. Like don't go near him and don't go near any of those guys. It was like you're playing against them, but if you deck them or you elbow them or you cross-check them, like it was just like it was like you got to do your chin strap up to start the game. It was like in the letter of the law.
Well, there was a toll to be paid. You went near Gretzky. It's McSorley. It's McClelland. There was a lineup of people that'd be waiting for you. And I
hit him in Greensboro one night, Jamie, and he fell down, and I was just the whole game I was looking around. I'm like, what did I get myself into? It wasn't a malicious hit. I just rubbed him out against the boards, and he went down. And I was like, I was waiting for it all night. I'm like, somebody's coming when I'm not looking. But it never happened.
Yeah. The game's changed. I think there's frustrations out there. I agree, Brian. Like, Connor's a human. He gets hacked and whacked all the time. He gets frustrated. We see it. He showed some frustration. I thought he went too far. And, people in Edmonton are like, yeah, but this and what about that? Doesn't matter.
No, you got to control your own stick.
There's penalties on either side, and you have to control yourself because I always say, remove the players, just look at the act, because if somebody did that to Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews, there'd be a summit. There'd be hearings. There'd be all sorts of things, or top players. We try to protect top players. But at the end of the day, those guys deserve the suspension for what they did.
By the way, if that was somebody else, that's 6 games. Like
it could be. If anything, if you're the league, you want to pump the brakes a little bit. Like
of course.
I do think the Matthews one is just so clear cut. It's the same. They're both superstars. Yeah. They're in it against guys who didn't do anything malicious, but the intention of Dahlin and Garland. They're there to piss the guy off, and they're trying to clutch and grab. And they got a reaction out of them. You got to control your stick 2 games. I would guess it goes the other way. If anything, maybe McDavid only gets 1 game as opposed to 2. But it's right there. But I think you're right. Like if that's
Xhekaj.
If that's Xhekaj, it's maybe 5 games or something, and you're like, well, you're malicious, you're crazy out there, you're a wild card. The league is naturally going to be uncomfortable with this because they don't want to suspend the best player. Like it's not good for business, but you have to keep some sort of semblance of integrity in your sport. You can't allow McDavid to get away with a blatant cross-check to the head.
And there was already noise about his little forearm shiver there on Marcus Johansson in Minnesota, right? Like that was a little accidentally on purpose type of here, take this with you on the way out type of thing. And you know what? Like these guys like that, Joe's showing it on the screen there, and it happens. It's a little pop there, and that doesn't rise to any level, maybe a fine or something, but I think it's more, you do have to have, I come back to your word, Brian, like the accountability. Like if McDavid gets nothing and Myers gets 2, that would be outrageous. You know what I mean? Like
they're both blatant cross checks to the head of an opponent. And you can't have that. So and McDavid, he's having a hearing. He's gonna get some sort of a suspension.
He's getting clipped.
And the Leafs are out in Edmonton. I think 5 games from now. He's not going to be out for that. Clearly, he's at most he's getting 2 games, but he will be suspended for the first time in his career. And anything that happens to Connor McDavid is always going to be news, and we're going to see it.
I was thinking about it. Like
back to 1%. Just quickly, back to 1%. He's missing 2
Oh,
games.
no.
Oh, absolutely. I've got to adjust the line on his chances of winning the Hart Trophy. If you're going to take yourself out of the lineup likely for 2 games, he goes back down to 1%. I got to cut it in half. Can't have that kind of behavior.
What about 1.5? You shave a half a point off for 2 games.
All right, fine. I'll go 1.5.
Dude, I think he can.
1.5.
He's going to go nuts after this suspension. Yes.
Okay.
He might.
He might.
Question, though. Looking at superstars, Has Crosby ever been suspended? I off the top of my head, my computer's acting up here, but Crosby or Ovechkin has been suspended, I believe, but it was missing an All-Star game, wasn't it? Or has he?
Yeah, that definitely happened. Ovi missed a game. It wasn't really a suspension. It was like a formality thing where he chose not to go, and then he had to miss a game. Or he was injured, and it was one of those, like, if you're going to miss the All-Star game because of injury, you got to miss a game when you come back. So it wasn't necessarily a punitive thing. But that's a good question. I don't have the answer. Doogie, look that up. No one's been suspended. Sid or Ovi, neither of them have been suspended. So there you go. Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid have both been suspended.
They've got McDavid on the FanDuel odds for the Hart, like tied with Draisaitl. I think he was like miles behind him, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was 15 games ago. He's always been in the hunt because of who he is.
Of course.
Like if you're FanDuel, you're always terrified this guy's going to do something crazy for 30 games, and that you got to protect yourself a little bit. But it is going to be a race. You know, like you mentioned earlier this hour that like the the switch gets flipped, and all of a sudden we're into the kind of race here towards the finish line, and the same thing's going to apply here with the Hart discussion because I guess McKinnon would be in the driver's seat right now, but I don't think that's a very secure position to be in, and I think there's a lot of different players who could step up and take it. So there's a lot on the line here coming down the stretch. The Art Ross, the Rocket to a lesser extent. I think Leon Draisaitl likely wins that. But there's going to be a lot of action in the NHL, the final 35 games or so.
What is Draisaitl at now? Is he at 33?
33 goals.
He got 2 in that loss. Yeah, 33. Yeah, so he's... Yeah.
It's a pretty good buffer, man. He's in the driver's seat pretty substantially for that Rocket. But, you know, listen, there's guys that are going to be on his heels. A lot of games to be played. Matthews is out of that hunt now. He's missed too much time. But you look at Austin, he scored again on Saturday night. And I think he scored in 7 of the 8 games since returning. And he's on, you know, like a ridiculous pace in terms of what he's been doing the last 8 games. 7 goals, 12 points. Shooting percentage is through the roof. Everything's going in for him. But that was going to balance out because he was missing out on a lot of opportunities earlier in the year that he usually tucks home.
I like some of the juice after the recent goals he scored. Like that reaction in the goal in Montreal, you don't really see that often from him. Reaction in Jersey, reaction in Dallas Stars. Like, he's coming around, man.
He's feeling better.
He looks like himself.
Better. You can tell he's feeling better. Like, I don't know, again, I don't know the nature of what he's fighting through, but he looks more comfortable out there. Like, he looks like he's got some pop. Again, I didn't love the goal that he scored from a goaltender standpoint. I thought that hit the middle of the net, but it just, you know, he's got some juice in his game.
We have a correction. Alex Ovechkin's been suspended 3 times.
I know. Brian Mudryk just sent me that. He's like, 3 times. I'm like, didn't we just say neither one of them has been suspended?
Sometimes you got to rely on Doogie to step up when you. Okay, Doogie, take us through the suspension list, please. Let
me just backtrack here. Is it in the notes that McDavid is, or none of them have ever been?
Well, we just asked Doogie on the fly. We said, have Sid or Ovi ever been suspended? We gave it a few minutes, looked over at Doogie, and Doogie said, absolutely not. They have not been suspended. And now, 2 minutes later, Doogie said, incorrect. Ovi's been suspended 3 times. What are the suspensions, please, Doogie?
Boys, I'll take it on the chin. He's been suspended 3 times. 1 for charging, 1 for boarding, and 1 for a knee-on-knee.
Okay.
2012, 2010, and 2009.
Okay. So earlier in his career, it's been a while. Which you can understand that. You got to really scroll down the
close,
page.
Man, you were close.
He's in the ballpark.
Dude, 3 times kneeing, charging, elbowing.
It's a rounding error.
None. It's all the same thing.
It's a rounding error. Doogie, all good, man. Are you sure Sid has not been suspended?
Positive.
You're 100% positive.
I don't know.
Dude, I swear to God, Sid's been suspended, man.
Maybe.
I feel like he has too. I feel like there's been a suspension, or there's been like arguments about it, like he should have been suspended for that or whatever, and like Doogie's just doubling down. Nope, nothing. Nothing to see here.
I hope so badly Sid's been suspended.
Like, what kind of computer are you using that? Like, is that an Etch-a-Sketch? Like, Google stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're still figuring that out, right? Doogie's getting to the bottom of things. He hasn't been here long. It's only been over a year. He's figuring things out. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. But what we do know is Austin Matthews has been suspended, and we think Connor McDavid likely will be. All right, Luke Wilson coming up in about 20 minutes on the 4 games over the weekend. A lot of focus, obviously, on the Bills-Ravens game. The Detroit Lions are out.
I told you. I warned you, man.
I know, man. I owe you a lot of gratitude, I guess, and a lot of foresight there on your behalf.
I just smelt a rat. I just smelt something.
Was it his fault, though? Was it his fault? He's like, it's all my fault.
No,
that was crazy.
I don't like the crying after the game.
I don't either, man. I want my guy to be emotional, but to be like, oh, my fault. Like,
yeah. Like, dude, what are you doing, Dan Campbell? You can't go from biting kneecaps
to sobbing.
to sobbing because you lost. Like, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
You can't have it.
You could have some tears flowing down because when he said things like, to know what they put into this and how they get back up and get locked in.
Totally.
But you can't go down the road of it's all my fault.
Yeah.
You cannot cry saying it's all my fault.
I know that I was a little bit taken aback by that from Dan Campbell because I just feel like he's a showman like a lot. He loves talking and he gives these incredible speeches and he's a very likable guy.
Yeah.
But it was ugly, man. Like they got I wouldn't say blown out, but it was ugly on Saturday night. And credit to Washington because that was a great, great win. So Luke will join us on that. We got Keegan Matheson on the Jays signing today, the Jays offseason so far, and whether or not they can turn things around. Chris Johnston coming up as well and Leafs Tampa tonight. We're waiting for McDavid to see if he gets suspended. If so, how many games? And there's a bunch of games going on in the NHL today. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Luke Wilson will join us in about 15 minutes. His take on what we saw over the weekend in the NFL. We'll get to something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza as well. Jays are making things happen, which is always good to see. Always good to see the Jays getting active, getting people back on their sides.
So you think if they can lock down Vladdy, you think everybody goes to opening day singing the management's praises?
No, I don't think there's anything they can do to get everyone singing their praises. That ship has sailed. The only way you're going to get people back officially is if they actually win. Wins will ultimately prevail in the end. If you win, people will come around and be like, actually, this was a pretty good move, and who cares about Ohtani, and it's difficult in the offseason because there's no ball games. Like, there's no box scores. There's no standings. Like nothing's going on. You need to win games in order for everyone to eventually, come back around. But I do think them signing Vladdy would be a big sign. It sounds as if they're still on Pete Alonso. I don't know how that all works. Alonso and Vladdy and Santander and who's going to play what positions and who plays first and who DHs. But it sounds as if they're still looking at that. They need pitching, in my opinion. They still need at least one starter, at least one. Right. But there's still guys available. That's the thing. It's a weird offseason in baseball, man. It happens every year. The big guys go early, and then there's like 50 quality players who just sit there until spring training starts. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So if they add another piece or two, go and win some games, all will be forgotten. Fans are fickle in every single market. That's the nature of the beast, man. They just want to win.
Yeah, but this one's a little bit different, man.
It's ugly. They really got to win.
They place a lot of the blame on missing out on some of these players. I think
it's embarrassing now because it's like, Jays were in on that, didn't get them. Jays were in on that, didn't. It's almost like some of the American media members.
And why is it always the Jays? Like had to have been other teams that aren't being listed. So it's almost like insiders are goofing on the Jays.
Well, that's what it feels like that and I think not to get too heavy here. But at the core of this for Blue Jay fans is there's always some insecurities and an inferiority complex that it's the only Canadian market and we're different and it's just a reality. And there's always this concern that we're viewed upon as, well, that's the Canadian team and I think we're Screech powers.
Dude, that's a dirty tweet.
Dude, that was the funniest thing. I was laughing
that poor
out
bastard
loud.
Screech walked into that classroom and saw his girl doing that on him.
Lisa Turtle and Zach Morris making out, and Screech was waiting for a date and thought he had her. And that like I was howling. My kids were trying to fall asleep. My kids are like, "Can you shut up? What are you doing out there?"
And it's not like you can even explain.
Can't explain Screech, Saved by the Bell. But that's basically what it is. Like all these players are like, "You're Screech. Get out of here." Like the Jays are Screech.
Yeah. Isn't there a scene in a movie where someone says, "Dude, you're Screech"?
Yeah,
like
there's
to actual Screech.
There's a famous in the movie Made. It's Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau. Screech gets into the club before them, and Vince Vaughn goes, "You just let Screech in, and you're not going to let us in." Like basically, are you like Screech took the money to go and be in the movie to get goofed on as Screech?
Yeah.
That was basically the punchline. You got try to find that. The movie's Made.
Yeah.
Let's play that in the next hour.
He's like, "You let Screech in."
Yeah, there's
the tweet.
Like the Jays are Screech, man. Screech powers. Look at how happy he is when he opened that door, and Zach Morris is just absolutely all over Lisa.
He is on a riding John Deere, and Screech, he's got a 6-pack on a riding green John Deere mower.
Yeah,
and Screech is devastated.
Screech is so heartbroken, and that's Sasaki and the Dodgers, and the Jays are Screech.
Yeah, that's Sasaki and Dave Roberts.
And Ross Atkins is sitting there with a bouquet of flowers and a tux on.
Yeah.
And Sasaki's like, "Screech, get the hell out of here." All right, hour 2 coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.